This is an updated video regarding what is happening in Israel. And I'd say let's get right to it because from what I'm seeing, it's just getting worse and worse. With now 25,600 people dead, 1.7 million people displaced. At least 190 people killed and 300 wounded in Gaza over the last 24 hours, numbers that are ridiculous. This is almost every hour. Dozens reported killed in the besieged southern city of Khan Younis as Israeli forces target hospitals, ambulances, and schools where thousands of civilians are sheltering. It's easy to kill people when they can't fight back. This is where the IDF fails. Most moral army in the world. Most sophisticated military on earth, one of them anyway. With U.S. assistance, and the best they could do is kill civilians, and not just civilians, but wounded or sick or the infirmed or even infants at hospitals, at Red Cross shelters, at United Nations or United Red Cross relief shelters. That's what they're famous for bombing for. From Operation Cast Lead, Operation West Bank, all these operations where the Amnesty International reports come out show the atrocities by Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the IDF. It's only when the IDF is named, that's when it's anti-Semitic. And it's a song old as time. And no one's listening anymore. Dr. Ahmed El-Maghrabi, head of plastic surgery and burns at Khan Younis Nasser Hospital, says there is bombing all around us. At least 25,290 people have been killed and 63,000 wounded in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th. Large U.S. labor union calls for ceasefire in Gaza. Even here in America, we have some corporations, some with a backbone, willing to criticize what's going on. Service Employees International Union, which represents nearly 2 million employees in healthcare, the public sector, and property services in the United States and Canada, has called for the ending of the war in Gaza. Mary Kay Henry, the SIEU president, says, "We call for an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages, delivery of life-saving food, water, medicine, and other resources to the people of Gaza." She added that the demand is rooted in pain felt by the union's members, including the hundreds of thousands of SEIU healthcare workers who see themselves in the healthcare workers in Gaza who have been killed trying to save lives. Not killed by Hamas, by the way, or Palestinians, by the Israeli IDF, because they can give a shit about the United States. Be right on it. The Israeli government is a racist, nationalist, genocidal entity. And when you have nothing but settlers and Zionists encapsulating your war cabinet with some members of the Blue and White Party, like the president, you have nothing more than a bunch of raging fascists who use religion as the driving force to what they're doing, because God is a real estate agent to these people. Imagine the gall and the arrogance to speak on behalf of God and think that what you're doing is godly. U.S. Navy commander accuses Iran of direct involvement in Houthi attacks. Sure. Brad Cooper, the U.S. Navy's top commander in the Middle East, says Iran is very directly involved in the ship attacks by Houthi group. Clearly, the Houthi actions, probably in terms of their attacks on merchant shipping, are the most significant that we've seen in 2 generations. Facts simply are they're attacking the international community. Thus, the international response I think you're seeing. It's ironic. It's Israel is interfering in Palestinians' merchant intake. Do you not agree that it has to go to the ports in Ramallah, the border of Egypt and Israel? Forget about Lebanon. Israel's over there too, in the north. Israel controls merchant shipping in Israel. and goods that are going to Palestinians have to be vetted by Israelis. Yet they're more concerned that Houthis are shooting back at U.S. ships because U.S. ships that were stationed there long before October 7th have been funding the Saudi regime going back many years. And you have the nerve to talk about, well, now that we're going to be hit by these rockets, we got to do something. You weren't doing shit for the years prior when the Biden administration had been giving millions ever since he started his presidency, which he ran, by the way, of saying that, oh, I won't be a wartime president. Meanwhile, he's in 3 conflicts, the most since Bush and Obama. Here you have a hypocrite who basically, in the first few weeks while in office, went back on his word right away. Let's start giving money to Saudi Arabia. The weapons, we'll make the largest weapon deal with them. And those weapons went to attack Yemeni civilians. Because war is the only language these people speak in the government. Iran has previously denied involvement in the Houthis' military operations, stressing that its allies in the region have their own tools of power. Israeli raids have targeted a house adjacent to Nasser Hospital in Khan Younis. At least 40 bodies were transferred to the medical complex, Al Jazeera Arabic reports. Benjamin Netanyahu has told relatives of captives there is no real proposal by Hamas after recent media speculation that a truce and prisoner swaps are in the work. See, he's lying, right? Because Hamas has always stated that for a total ceasefire, they release all the hostages. Ceasefire meaning that stop killing civilians. This comes from a terrorist group. A terrorist group telling a bigger terrorist group how to act. This is what it's come to. This is what it's come to. And the Israeli military can be labeled a terrorist group. They have broken every single war crime. They have violated all the Rome statutes. Let's put it that way: war crimes, crimes by aggression, crimes against humanity, and genocide. That's why South Africa's charging them. Well, South Africa is anti-Semitic. They don't know anything about apartheid. UN agency for Palestinian refugees has said that telecommunication services in Gaza have been shut down for the past 7 days. The U.S. has announced its 5th round of sanctions on what the Department of Treasury says are Hamas-linked individuals and businesses. Get those Hamas. Let's bomb every square inch of Gaza, and while we're on it, West Bank, just to make sure that a Hamas isn't living behind the milk carton in a refrigerator. Now, they're in Qatar, millionaires. Israel knows this, too, because they're the ones who helped create Hamas. They didn't outright create them, but they facilitated their rise back in 1986. To offshoot the Palestinian Liberation Organization headed by Yasser Arafat, who was considered even worse than Sheikh Yassin, who created the Jama Islamiyah group, which later became Hamas. That's what Israel did. The Israeli government wanted to have a warring sect in Hamas to offshoot the PLO. And now they have created Frankenstein monster. Washington has also targeted 4 officials and supporters of Kataib Hezbollah, as well as Fly Baghdad, accusing the airline of providing assistance to Iran-backed proxy groups in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon. Oh, look at all the countries that we are to go to war to soon. Well, we've been at war with Iraq twice. Syria was still there. I don't know why. And Lebanon is the home of Hezbollah. And Israel's attacking north of the country. What about Iran? There's a New York Times article, as you can see here. Attacks in Syria and Iraq, ratchet tensions in a region already on edge. Senior Iranian intelligence official was killed in an Israeli airstrike at Damascus. as U.S. troops came under attack in Iraq. The whole region's on fucking fire. Iran accused Israel of launching an airstrike on the Syrian capital Damascus on Saturday that killed senior Iranian military figures. The latest in a series of Israeli attacks on officials from Iran and two of its proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah. Iran vowed to retaliate, raising fears of even deeper regional turmoil ripped out from the war in Gaza. I've told you they're gonna enter the war. That Hezbollah would be first, that Lebanon would be first, Syria would be caused to retaliate, and then you have your war, right? Because Iran now enters the game. The United States is involved with the Lebanon and Hezbollah fully engaged. Iran becomes a factor, and it's Iran, Syria, and Lebanon against Israel, the United States, and the coalition powers. That's still my prediction. Because Israeli enemies come first before Saudi Arabia's enemies. Yeah, we'll take care of Saudi Arabia. Don't worry. Oh, we're fighting against Iran, so you'll back us there. It's a religious war between the two, Sunni Shia, right? The ghouls of the Wahhabi clan that still exist in the Saudi kingdom, even though they reformed. We've heard this before, but they're cracking down. They are, and at least I'll admit that much, but they're still there. Well, remember too, there's a great book I'm reading, Wahhabism by Cole Bunzel, and I'm going to be interviewing him Thursday. The country itself was formed on the basis of Wahhabism, but the military is in charge. I mean, the kingdom's in charge of its military, but the Wahhabi ideology is still prevalent. They ain't going nowhere. You still got imams there that teach Wahhabism, that go all the way back to the Emirate of Diriyah in the 1700s. Before it was Saudi Arabia, it was called the Emirate of Diriyah, the first Saudi state. So yes, Saudi Arabia, Israel enemies. I mean, there's a hierarchy here. Israel first, because that's the real slogan here in the United States: Israel first, Saudi Arabia second. But Saudi Arabia, we share very little in common with them. But we'll do business with them because they give us lots of money. And they buy U.S. weapons more than anybody on the face of the earth. Separately, several U.S. troops in Iraq were being evaluated for traumatic brain injuries on Saturday evening. It's another effect of conflict. Is not just the psychological part of it, but also the physical. And for what? Really, for what? I mean, these soldiers should be walking out en masse. Has Iraq 2003 not given you guys a wake-up fucking call? You're not fighting for the people. You're fighting for the ghouls in Washington. Wake up. You got a fucking TV. Look what's happening. It was the latest of roughly 140 such rocket and missile attacks against U.S. troops based in Iraq and Syria over the past several months. You think they're going to stop? You're an invading army supporting a genocidal regime in Israel, and you're expecting not to be attacked? Two incidents underline the volatility that has been growing in the Middle East since October 7th. Israel has responded with a ferocious war in Gaza, now in West Bank. Across the region, a dizzying array of strikes and counterstrikes will expand the conflict to a wider war. This last week alone, the list of attacks and reprisals has been long and daunting. Iran fired missiles toward Iraq, Syria, and Pakistan. Pakistan responded by striking Iranian territory. Turkey hit Kurdish targets in northern Iraq and Syria. Hamas fired rocket attacks toward Israel. Israel continued to pound Gaza and struck southern Lebanon, where Hezbollah militants have fired rockets toward Israel in recent months. Houthi militants in Yemen took aim at commercial ships in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, and the United States retaliated with several rounds of strikes against Houthi targets. Of course, the New York Times is not going to tell you the real, the full story. That's just part of it. That the U.S. has been in the Mediterranean on behalf of Israel to act as a big brother of sorts against Hezbollah because the Israeli military can't defeat Hezbollah in a ground war. Not only that, you have the U.S.-funded genocide in Yemen, which, by the way, is still the biggest humanitarian crisis in the world. Let's not forget about them. Well, at the same time, now lesser funds go to Ukraine because now the money is here. Contractors like Boeing, Raytheon, and LG3 Technology. Oh, yeah. Keep making those rounds. Keep making those missiles. Keep that production line going. And last but not least, U.S. residents are funding illegal settlements in the West Bank. I mean, what more? Really, what more do you need? That one of the reasons for Israel allowing these attacks, and I'm going to say it because they were warning signs months prior. I mean, every outlet is almost reporting on it, except for the U.S. outlets. They got no backbone. But Israeli military knew about these attacks were coming, did nothing, just like 9/11. And it wasn't to get Hamas out of Gaza. It was to get all the Palestinians out so that Israelis can move in and make it Israeli owned. Well, here you have U.S. residents are funding illegal settlements in the West Bank. Now in the West Bank. It was Israel that was funding settlements in the West Bank. See, it's not about Hamas anymore. And of course, they're going to say, well, Hamas is in the West Bank too. Are they in Jenin? Are they in Rafah? Are they in Egypt? Are they in, soon, the borders now get a little bit wider. Hey, wait a minute, I see a Hamas over there too. An Israeli crowdfunding platform, Israel Gives. It gives. How about Israel Takes? Has allowed U.S. residents to donate millions of dollars since October 7th to causes including illegal West Bank settlements, paramilitary groups, and Israeli IDF force units currently operating in Gaza and the West Bank. Legal experts say that some of the campaigns may be illegal under U.S. tax law, with Israeli enforced on donors to Israel causes. Of course, when it comes to Israel, nothing's illegal, not even death. Death is encouraged, genocide, illegal building of settlements that go against international law. Oh, fuck them. Fuck Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. Fuck the Red Cross and fuck The Hague. That's what Netanyahu said last week. Who cares what The Hague thinks? Because they know they're not going to be charged for anything. Sure, Netanyahu will take the pressure. He'll go, but mission accomplished. While contributions from wealthy U.S. nonprofits and individuals to illegal settlements have been previously reported, Israel Gives established crowdfunding platform attached to an international network of linked nonprofits may allow small donors in the United States and beyond to claim tax deductions on funds sustaining war. And let me read that again. Small donors in the United States, companies that are giving to Israel in a state of war, can claim tax deductions on funds sustaining war and settlement in the occupied territories. Illegal. The war's illegal. The settlements are illegal. What the fuck? But it's Israel, so it doesn't matter. The revelations come amid an escalating humanitarian crisis caused by IDF attacks by killing civilians in Gaza and mounting campaigns in the U.S. to enforce laws that should prevent U.S. nonprofits from funding illegal settlements. You would think, right? But when you have dual U.S. citizens, U.S. Israeli citizens in the country, and you have these idiots, the Christian Zionists, that go to places of worship like John Hagee Ministries, who, they're so warped morally and mentally that they want revelations to happen, literally. The Battle of Megiddo, where all the armies of the world come and convey, and Christ comes down, and, the first of 144,000 selected, and then anybody else who adheres to the principles of Christ is saved. You get a second chance, but the Jews don't believe in Christ, so they're all killed. And then you have the Jews that believe, well, once the third temple's rebuilt, the Mashiach comes and we have 500 Gentile slaves. I don't know where the commonality between Israel and the United States Christians are, because there is no commonality in the religious sector. In fact, there's more to do with Christianity and Islam than there is with Christianity and Israel and Judaism when it comes to the New Testament. Israel Gives is an Israeli tech company founded in 2009 by Israeli entrepreneurs Jonathan Ben Dior and Joseph Gidlet, according to company filings in the tech sector, monitor Crunchbase. It allows nonprofits in Israel to solicit funds on a platform that is similar to GoFundMe and other crowdfunding operations where users can initiate fundraising efforts, set a fundraising goal, and donors can record their name, the amount of their individual donation on the location on the fundraising page. A network of associate nonprofits, most of which count co-founder Jonathan Bendor as an officer, allow tax deductions on donations to Israeli nonprofits for residents in the United States, Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, and Australia. It also runs a donor-advised fund, a kind of nonprofit entity, which have been widely criticized for, among other things, concealing flows of dark money to right-wing causes. Why? Because Zionism is right-wing. And look who's in charge of the war cabinet and the Netanyahu administration, the most right-wing, the most nationalist cabinet in Israeli history. Because when it comes to politics, when it comes to geopolitics that is involving the darker side of history, the extremists of the left and right dominate, whether it be communism in Soviet Russia, communism in China, Khmer Rouge, Pol Pot, or right-wing zealot nationalists like we see in Israel, and the ultra-Orthodox Salafists that reside in Saudi Arabia, which gave us groups like Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State in Levant, Abu Sayyaf, Jama Islamiyah, Boko Haram, which have caused terror attacks around the world, killing tens of thousands, which led to a war on an ideology that killed millions. It doesn't matter. Because when it comes to war and conflict, it's never apolitical. It's always mainly political or mainly religious in nature or a mixture of both. Racism is alongside these issues because it's always the minorities that are the ultimate victims of this game. You know, the problem that we're facing here in the United States is domestic. Rising rent prices, inflation, a rising state of homelessness, a sense of despair, a constructural divide of the very people, whether it comes to politics or racism or sexism or religion. We're a very polarized country. And on top of it, we're wanting and needing. And it's not going to come through a vote, no matter who's running, if it's Biden or Trump. The problems here in the States will not change, no matter who's in office. Because once you realize that there is no left and right, that the tenets of religion that are taught at these mega churches are false, that the missing spirituality, that that racism, the idea that a skin color matters with anything is irrelevant. Once you realize this, you are empowered, enlightened, so to speak, free from the conflict from within. Now, at the same time, the bigger issues of war, of human life that is happening in our name goes unnoticed because you're too busy focused on each other, thinking that you're the enemy. The enemies are in government. I'm anti-government. Until there's a new form of government, I'm going to be anti-government for as long as I'm alive. I see the system and how it works, and it's a failed system. Point blank. I'm talking about the higher echelons, not state governments. State governments are fine. We could deal with this and fix these, trivialities later. We got to fix the very top because it comes to our vote. And when we support these people, we're supporting people that are killing people abroad in your name. And I encourage people not to vote. Because once you put your ballot in, once you put your vote in, you are saying, well, I don't want to be left out. I don't want to be a loser. I don't want to be seen as a anti-American. Well, you are. You're anti-American if you vote because You're saying that my vote is going to a person who allows for this conflict to happen in Israel, where it's displacing 1.7 million people, 3 million displaced in Yemen, and for the conflicts to continue. Meanwhile, my problems here at home come from a vote in the House of Representatives or at the Senate, and nothing ever gets done. A one-bedroom apartment in New York is close to $3,200. On the medium right now, it's $2,500. Which is raising, by the way, $2,000 for one bedroom. In Manhattan, it's about $4,000. I mean, this is it. The wider gap between rich and poor are getting exponentially greater, and it's happening at a very concerning rate. None that I've ever seen in my 54 years on Earth. All right, that's it for the update video. And of course, whenever there's an update, I will report without bias and without prejudice. So see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.